Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is Randy Wright, your captain speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapenden. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, we've all seen a bunch of misinformation peddled out in the media cycle by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media as of late, particularly in response to the stuff that's been going on in Colorado. Trump would have us all believe that the people of Colorado didn't have a chance to have a vote in their normal caucus procedure. Folks, this simply isn't true. Colorado held its caucus as usual back on March 1st. The only change from last time was that they didn't conduct a non-binding straw poll. Trump failed to show up. Cruz did. Sorry, folks, but this sort of stuff matters. It's not just something that you make up. It's going to resonate with the delegates, and those that wanted to vote had to actively participate in the caucusing process. It has been that way in Colorado since 1912. So is Trump really wanting us or expecting us to believe that things were set up the way they were in Colorado back in 1912 to Trump? I don't see how that's even possible.
Again, this comes into knowing the rules, having an understanding of the rules.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure the rules are quite readily available for anybody and their brother and sister or daddy, uncle, whoever it is that wants to view them. That's the wonderful world of technology, folks. Everything you want to know is online. It's not hard to find it. We could probably spend the next couple of minutes pulling it up and having the rules to where we could read them to you. But we're not going to do that because we don't want to bore you with the rules. The fact of the matter is, Donald Trump knew the rules. In fact, I believe that he actually knew the rules back in August of last year. Now, I'm quite certain
because that's when they announced that they were changing the straw poll part because of the way that the National Convention had been changed in 2012, basically to avoid the same type of scenario that we're seeing play out in the 2016 presidential election cycle. So yes, in a way, there is this truth to trying to say that the establishment was monkeying around with it, but you've got to recall that the GOP state apparatus is a private entity, and they are allowed to make the rules that are governing them. And that is the only change they had, was that of getting rid of the non-binding straw poll. I mean, that's literally all it was. And this is what Trump is throwing a Trumper tantrum about.
So, in other words, basically, there's a certain portion that was done away with that is completely irrelevant to begin with, because, in my opinion, polls only mean two things. They only serve two purposes. Number one, to teach those that don't know how to count. And number two, give something for people, give something to people to complain about. That's really it. And apparently, getting rid of the poll has actually served both of those purposes, because Trump says that, the numbers are unfair, blah, 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 this and that. And I didn't get any delegates. So,
but you know what's so funny about that, Jeremy, is that when he's saying that it's unfair, we still have to recall that proportionately speaking, per votes, he's gotten a greater percentage of delegates than Cruz has.
it's like 45%.
45%, I believe. And what's so interesting is that Cruz and the Cruz crew haven't been running around wringing their hands, screaming, "Henny penny, the sky is falling." It's because they understand how the process works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this sort of petulant childishness is going to come back to haunt Trump in the long run. In fact, I think we're already seeing the results of that.
Well, you don't see the Cruz camp throwing a fit about what happened in Arizona or throwing a fit about what happened in Nevada. You don't see them throwing a fit about what happened in Ohio when Kasich won Ohio and Trump got more votes than Cruz did in Ohio. You
also don't see them throwing a fit about Trump getting the winners take all states like Florida with not a majority of the vote.
Mm-hmm.
It just goes to common sense, but that's the same saying you've used on past episodes of the Wright Flyer, being that if common sense were common, everybody would have it.
Yes. Now, the thing is, the reason why the Cruz camp is not throwing a big fit or raising a stink about it or having a temper tantrum like Trump is because they have integrity. They say, yeah, okay, well, this is how the process works. We're just going to have to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, press on even harder, and actually do something, strategize on how to win. But Trump doesn't do that because he expects everything to be handed to him, just like his whole life, including the $100 or the $1 million that his derelict father and slumlord genius did. It's grow up. Grow up, Trump. Nothing in my life has ever been handed for me. I've always worked hard for it. Guess what? That makes me a better man than you. It makes, in fact, everybody who has put their own effort into something and accomplished something, it makes us better than you. It makes us the winners because we can lay our heads down at night on our pillows, no matter how raggedy they may be or fluff they may be. Hell, that may be the only thing that I have that's precious as in my material possessions is having one of the bestest, bigliest, softliest pillows that I can put my head on when I go to sleep. But you know what? It's mine. I earned it. I put the effort into it. You don't get to have that, Trump. You know why? Because you don't want to put effort into anything. You just want to step up to something and bark your little flapping, gaping maw of a mouth and demand that it's so. Doesn't work that way.
Now, it's interesting because I have a clip here from one of the actual delegates, Ari Armstrong, appeared on CNN and explained a lot of what was happening in the delegate contest that occurred over the weekend. And to be completely honest, what happened to Trump was a full shellacking. And the reason it was a full shellacking was he just didn't understand the way the process worked. And so I'm going to go ahead and cue up that clip right now, and then we'll be back to analyze it. So here we go.
I'm going to turn now to Ari Armstrong, a political blogger and writer and a Colorado Republican. Ari, you attended Saturday's convention and you're against Trump's nomination. When you were there, tell us what you witnessed in terms of how organized the campaigns were, Trump versus Cruz.
Well, Ted Cruz appeared, and so obviously that made a difference, whereas Donald Trump did not appear at all. But Donald Trump, unfortunately, is simply misinformed. And something you remarked reflects some of that distortion. We do have a caucus process in Colorado. There was voting. I first went to my local precincts. At the precincts, which was open to all Colorado Republicans who have been registered for at least a month, then people were elected as delegates to the state and congressional conventions. And there is where we selected the national delegates. So I was actually an alternate to the state convention. So I got to observe the entire process, though I myself did not get to vote on the national delegates.
But some would look at this process, and you actually even said in your article that this process adds an extra layer of representation. But would that extra layer take away the voters' voice more, as Trump is contending here? And you know, he's basically saying this is not a democratic process.
Well, look, representative politics is hardly a newfangled idea in America. That's the basis of American government, right?
Ah, but there's the problem. You see, Trump doesn't know what the basis of American polity is. He's spoken at no great length to the Constitution or how he would govern by the Constitution. He hasn't expressed in any modicum or fashion as to how he would be beholden to the rules as they have always been in this country. And isn't it amazing how clear and concise the language was used by this Mr. Armstrong in explaining the Colorado delegate process? Far from what Trump has been contending and whining about for these past several days, the voters of Colorado didn't have their vote denied. They had to be proactive. You know, what we've been speaking about with respect to our constitutional system of government and what our founding fathers expected us to do, going back to our first episode.
Well, I can tell you right now that Mr. Armstrong, the guy's a loser. He didn't vote for me in Colorado. You know, I didn't show up, so what? I don't have to show up. I mean, you know, I'm bigly, you know, I should just, my name should be enough for them to know to vote for me. He didn't vote for me. He's a loser. I can tell you this, he's a loser. Yo, shut up. This is how it works. Okay?
Yeah.
Again, the rules. You weren't even there. You didn't even bother to make a presence. It's kind of like, you know what? Filling out one of those little sweepstakes cards where it says in the bottom, you know, must be present to claim prize. You weren't there. Now, if you're going to run for the highest office in the land, you knew the rules back in August, but you don't know them now, apparently, saying the rules were this and that. You know, stop playing the David Duke charade. We're tired of it. You didn't show up. Now, that's not presidential, is it? If you're expected to do something, or at least perceived to do something, you didn't even show up. What were you doing? Playing golf with Obama?
Or Clinton. I mean, but this brings us directly to that next point where Trump claimed that the Colorado convention was rigged. And this is a talking point that Trump always resorts to when he doesn't get his way. It's always that someone cheated. It's never that he is perhaps part of the problem, that he could simply fail to resonate with the voters. Yes, very Al Gore-like of him. Folks, this is a very childish way to conduct oneself. Yet, that's how Donny Boy has been conducting himself throughout this entire 2016 election cycle. I've heard all sorts of things, from the claim that the convention was rigged, that you're un-American if you condone what happened in Colorado. What's un-American about what happened in Colorado? Because your candidate didn't win, now that's all of a sudden un-American? Please spare me this stupid rhetoric. We know that the caucus went forward as before. The only difference, again, was a meaningless straw poll. This is what they're getting their feathers ruffled over. It's beyond absurd and ridiculous.
It's embarrassing, is what it is. It's absolutely embarrassing. And you know what's even more embarrassing? When you have individuals that claim that they're American. Oh, we're Trump supporters. We're, you know, patriots. We're Americans. We're this, we're that, and blah, blah. But yet they want to call somebody else un-American or not conservative because we don't support.
Just over a political disagreement. It's beyond me, Jeremy. That is beyond
it's
pale.
Disgusting. It's disgusting. It makes me want to vomit.
It has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. I thought the whole purpose of our representative republic was so that we could express disagreeing political points of view. I thought that was part of the tyranny, oppression, and despotism that our founding fathers fought so hard to separate themselves from in that long, drawn-out, bloody struggle known as the American War of Independence.
Yeah. Well, guess what? Here's an idea. You want to call me un-American? Why don't you all collectively just move to another country? Maybe Cuba. Move on down to Cuba, huh? And then you can rename it, you know, the New America.
Or
You'll go down there. And then you can call me un-American at that point in time, because I will never, ever give any allegiance to what you're wanting. Ever. You don't even know what
America is. So counterproductive.
They don't even know what Americanism is. They have no clue.
You know what it is, Jeremy? It's, you know, this Cruz derangement syndrome on full display.
Yeah.
This is another example of Cruz derangement syndrome gone wild. It's as though the Trump camp is trying to heighten expectations or smooth a path for Trump's exit, but because Trump is feeling rejected, he feels the need to destroy the entire system. Remember that Manafort said that it is Cruz that employs the scorched earth policies, destroying everything in his wake. What that is, folks, is classical projection. Trump knows that he isn't resonating anymore, and this is a massive game of crying over spilled milk.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely it is. And it has to stop. If it continues, it's going this is that wedge that we've talked about that is splintering everything and just causing everything to become sharded. You know, it's all these shards and splinters and all these different factions. This is what they want. Because, see, here's another thing. Trump is going to profit from this. He's not going to prosper from it. He's going to profit from it. He doesn't know what prospering is. Why? Because he's never had that emotion of actually earning something and doing something, putting the effort into it, and then reaping the rewards from it in a legitimate way. Because he's never done anything on his own. It's always been either handed to him or he's achieved it in an illegal or undermined fashion by swindling people or using the law to evict people from their property, whatever the case is. That's the way. There's no legitimate integral satisfaction with him. It's pure monetary. That's it.
Well, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that it's not even just pure monetary. It's just pure self-interest. I don't think, even if it wasn't money, we've seen his ego play out time and again to where he gets so wound up in his own self-image. And in fact, if you stop and think about what his entire company is built upon, it's built upon branding. That's all it is. He doesn't really offer any concrete services. It's all just slapping his name onto another business, investing other people's money, using tax loopholes to screw the taxpayers to then make his businesses profitable, as you said, not prosperous, but profitable. And it all comes down to this grandiose image that he has created of himself. Folks, that is classical narcissism. Classic case of it.
Yeah, here's another example. Claiming that he was a small business in New York after 9/11 and receiving $150,000. Yeah, really, you're a multi-billionaire, but yet you claim to have had a small business. How does
here's the
that
other thing.
work?
Here's the other thing. You know, most people when they refer to Trump, they call him a corporate icon. That his company is a corporate entity.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've heard that. I've heard that. But when you really go and look to see what Trump's company is, it's not a corporation. And I know perhaps this is me playing a little bit of pedantics here, but it is an LLC. It is a limited liability company. And this is playing off of that idea. I think that he has purposefully made it an LLC as opposed to an S Corp that would get the same or similar tax type situation so that he could exploit those loopholes, like you mentioned with the 9/11 thing for small businesses, thereby allowing him to proclaim himself as some sort of small business that could move forward with the taxpayer incentive. Of course, the idea of the taxpayer incentive works against everything that he has claimed. It goes again to show that every time he tries to go into a new operation, it always turns out to be a facade, a charade, this fake thing, and ultimately that comes back to bite the consumers. And we saw that with Trump University. We've seen that with just about every endeavor that he's engaged in, including Trump mortgages that he created at the time of the financial market meltdown. But, and guess what? That didn't last either.
All of this needs to just, again, it just needs to stop. We know why he's in there. We know what his true intention is. His true intention is to better himself, benefit himself. That's it. He doesn't care about the United States. He doesn't care about America. He doesn't care about the American citizens. He doesn't care about the sovereignty of this nation. It's evident. It's obvious he doesn't. If he did, he would not behave in the way that he does. He wouldn't tell people, I'm going to pay your legal fees if you smash the hell out of that person for interrupting my rally.
But
that's
you know what's
not
so funny about
Americanism.
that, Jeremy? You know what's so funny about that? He's now come out and said that he never said it. You see, that's that same type of consistent
It was John
inconsistency that we talk about, or John Miller. We don't know which. So maybe he has split personality disorder. All I can say is no matter what he has, it is detrimental to the United States of America at large, and it just proves that he is not qualified to wield the reins of political power in this great representative republic of ours.
And with that being said, what that's doing is damaging the voting populace. It is setting up our electoral process for utter failure. It is setting up our freedoms and liberties to be stripped away from us, because the more people that he has duped into this, now he could get more people, jumping on board the Trump Titanic to their own demise. But I don't think it's ever going to outnumber those of us that either voted third party or just didn't go out and vote at all because the GOP couldn't put up a viable candidate. If Trump is the nominee, you're going to see a lot more people vote third party. And people say, well, then you're just voting for Hillary. No, that's not how it works. See, it's not us voting for Hillary at that point because we won't support Trump. It's you. It's the Trump Stapo. It's Trump and his Trump Stapo that is going to put Hillary in the White House. You know why? Because they don't care.
Well, and not everything is some grand Trumpspiracy theory. I know they like to think of it that way, but not everything is a grand Trumpspiracy theory. Maybe some people just don't like the brash, bombastic, vulgarian style of the New York businessman, billionaire, real estate tycoon, and all-around vulgarian. And of course, that comes back to not just harm the GOP. You see, where a lot of the punditry gets it wrong is they always stop on this notion that it's just bad for the GOP. I'm going to take this a step further. No, it's bad for America in general. Yep. And the reason it's bad for America in general is that it creates this further sense of divisiveness, this divide. He's driving that wedge in and cleaving us apart as a people, increasing and contributing to the balkanization that Obama has done throughout his disastrous 2 terms of his regime. And that's the last thing America needs in an identity crisis and in a constitutional crisis like we're facing right now.
And again, the whole thing, it's sickening. It really is. It's beyond embarrassing. It makes me want to vomit. In fact, a bout of the flu would be more welcoming to me right now than this continuing. I don't know. I don't have any other words to describe on how distraught this is not only making me, but other people in the country. And again, the worse it gets, the longer this goes on, the more the wedge is driven in to the heart of what our country is. It's like a slow, agonizing, painful death. At what point?
And it's all been by design. It's all been by design. Don't think that Trump went into this thinking that he would be a great paragon of conservative values. At least for 50 years, he has not held conservative beliefs. And he even consulted with Bill Clinton, husband of who his supposed arch rival is going to be in this general election cycle, before actually officially throwing his hat into the ring. You know, folks, that just spells all sorts of fishiness to me. The whole rotten edifice stinks to high heaven. And it makes me wonder whether or not he's a plant. At some point, it's got to go from this notion of theory into the great weight and preponderance of the evidence clearly indicates that he is a part of the problem and that he is a plant. I think we are now at the point where we can say that he is the problem, that his tactics are the problem, that he is a plant that is working against the American people. Also, take a look at the way that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media just hyperventilate and drool over him. They're giving him a free pass now, but I can guarantee you when it comes to the general election, they're going to remove all of that Teflon coating he supposedly has from his hairspray.
There's actual proof to why he has more media coverage. And I'm going to point to one media, just one media outlet. When was the last time any of you or anybody recalls Fox News giving a person just over 11 minutes on a telephone interview on one show? Usually the segments on various different shows last anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes. Then they take commercial break to where they thank their sponsors so that they can get paid and fatten their own pockets. But 11 minutes on the phone doing a call-in interview? Well, I guess we know who the corporate sponsor was of that particular segment, don't we?
Of course. The same one that had given a lot of money to Judge Jeanine Pirro, whose husband used to be the family attorney for Trump that was on retainer. Apparently, she's now also on retainer, but she's not practicing. This is just... It's a conflict of interest, the likes of which we have not seen in a great long while. And it's disgusting because when you stop and think about what it is that they are portraying themselves to be, it's as an objective thing. Remember, Fox News's slogan was always in the past fair and balanced, but it's quite clear to me now that they've departed from that they don't believe in that anymore, that that's not a central tenet of what they work towards, and they have all bought into this illusion that this fairy tale that Donald Trump is constructing and composing as he goes along in ad-lib fashion, but you can't just do that and expect to win an election. You can't just march into a state, have your apparatus there, then tear it apart before the unbound delegates or the uncommitted delegates go through their selection process. You have to be part of the political system. After all, isn't that what a representative republic is all about? These are the sorts of issues that this notion, this crazy notion that a politician is a bad thing is going to come back to bite you each and every time. I know maybe he could send Dr. Ben I'm a Victim Carson out to try and win some more delegates, because I think that worked very well for him in North Dakota, where I think he got all of like one delegate. And you see, it's not that what is happening here is some grand Trumpspiracy. It's not. But he's going to portray it that way because he's already trying to get back to that notion of where he's walking back expectations. Because in his mind, the bigliest of bigly problems that he could ever encounter is watching that poor little ego of his, which is probably smaller than his hands, collapse and crumble before his very eyes. Now, folks, we are going to get into this more as the show goes along, but it's just an important way to think of this as food for thought. So we see that with Trump, we have all of this problem of repeating ourselves, of not having any form of substance, and then whenever things don't go our way, we throw Trumper tantrums. And I think we're already seeing this start to spill over to the general population being unhappy with Trump, that he's starting to lose a lot of power and influence. And that brings me to the question of John the Mushroom, my daddy was a mailman, Kasich, who is apparently in all the polling, they're saying he's in second place in New York and Pennsylvania, and Cruz is in third place. I don't understand the mindset of some of these places other than they just don't like Texas, and they're going to try and punish true conservatives, but that doesn't make sense either.
No. Why punish people? Is that, does he get some kind of arousal out of that? Punishing people for what? Engaging in exercising their rights?
I guess so.
Choosing who they want to vote for. I mean, they don't support him, so it's kind of like, back in the medieval times, you don't support the king, or you say anything against the king or the king's family, the knights, so on and so forth, you were put to death. At the very worst, at the very least, you were, the stocks and pillars. It's
usually you were branded.
Sure, and you know what? In a way, we are kind of branded. I mean, we've already been called un-American. We've been called Nazis. We've been called what is it? Illegal alien supporters. It's just it's unreal. Idiots. I mean, we've gotten death threats. So in a way, we have been branded because we don't support Trumpolini, really.
Well, and it's more so than just that. The people that are going and clamoring to Kasich, who really has no chance of winning whatsoever. It is a mathematical impossibility. I don't understand what their focus is. What do they hope to accomplish? These questions should really be posed to them at the exit polling. But of course, we know that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media is never going to pose that sort of question. Why? Because again, it goes against this propagandistic message that they have been touting on throughout the entirety of the 2016 election cycle. And this is a perfect explanation as to why it has become such a circus. And John Kasich really, really needs to drop out. Really needs to, right now.
Well, I think it's come to the point with Kasich to where he knows he can't win. There's no, like you said, mathematical possibility of him winning. So he's just saying, hey, you know what? I can't win. Everybody's going to lose. That's the mindset. Of course, I think that's why he made the statement that he would really prefer to run as a Democrat because, well, the Democrats just want everybody to suffer anyways. I mean, he truly is a Fabian in sheep's clothing, if you think about it. He absolutely is. I don't really see any difference between Kasich and Trump in that regard, except maybe Trump's, hairpiece is possibly still alive.
Well, true. The whole thing about Dennis Kucinich Kasich is that he just is a dislikable character. I can't say that he has any redeeming qualities. He was for all of this anti-gun stuff back in the 1990s. He was all about trying to double down on his efforts to get whatever he wanted at the expense of the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country. And that leaves a very negative taste, or a very bad taste, in people's mouths. And I think that's why he hasn't even won a single state other than his home state. What does that say about a candidate if you cannot win a state other than your home state? And even Marco Rubio, who had more delegates, dropped out.
I think it's the point of, he knows he can't win, so he's just going to take everybody down with him. I think he is part of this whole plan, this regiment that they put together. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if Kasich and Trump both consulted with Clinton and are working in an effort to do this.
Well, we know that Kasich has gotten funding from George Soros, who has also funded Trump Tower Chicago.
Yes. And let's look at all the debates. How many times did Kasich and Trump banter back and forth with each other?
Rarely,
if at all. So it's kind of, you know, maybe Kasich is one of the little instigators that is attached at the hip of the schoolyard bully that goes out and, you know, pokes and prods at people and gets people to do this and that. And then in comes Trump, you talking about me, you doing this, I ought to pummel you, I ought to do this, I ought to do that, just in typical bully fashion. I don't think that's very far stretched at all. A lot of people would say, well, that's way out there. I don't think so. I don't think so.
No.
Everything is lining up to fit that scenario.
Well, if you stop and think about it, the way that Kasich has conducted himself throughout this 2016 presidential election cycle has been bully-like. He has said, I'm going to stay in. I'm the only one that's good. Like today, he mentioned that you could either have the dark path with either Cruz or Trump, or at the brokered convention, he could win. But that's a sniveling way to do it. And I don't think it's going to come down to that, because I think that Cruz will have the delegates wrapped up, loyal and committed to him. Because it's not like what the Trump camp has been trying to portray Cruz as though he is this great, unlikable, unwashed Hun. That again, is this type of Northeastern bias that I get from Trump. You know, that New York City snootiness. Looking down their nose at anybody who's not from their city, and their city is the only city. In fact, their city encompasses the entire world. At least that's how they look at it. And so they attack Cruz as unlikable because of that. Yep. And then he's talking about everything being negotiable. Again, these are all signs that he is not truly who he claims to be. And that he being Donald Trump, is working against the interests of the American people. But then with Kasich, it's delusional. It's a hateful thing. There's a lot of animus and maliciousness in the actions that he has taken thus far. And again, there's no way he can win.
No. You know, it's like I said, Kasich being in the race still served a purpose up until this point. I don't think he serves a purpose anymore. I really don't.
Other than a spoiler.
Other than a spoiler, and actually being a complete disruptor and being the spear point or the tip of this wedge that is being thrust into the heart of what our country stands for. It's, you know, again, it's a disgusting thought. But what he needs to do is drop out. In fact, right here, right now, we at the Wright Flyer are demanding for you to drop out of the race. Kasich, get out now. Get out now before you continue to embarrass yourself, because this is how it's going to work. The longer you stay in, we're going to keep hammering on you. In fact, I think that we're just going to have to start digging up some stuff just to bring to the forefront some stuff that people may not be aware of, Mr. Kasich. And I think we're just going to have to bring that to light. So you have the choice. You could drop out now, or you could be forced out. It's up to you. I would take the first option rather than the latter.
Mm-hmm. You see, it comes down to this being an election cycle of selfishness. I don't think there's a way that we could describe it other than that. We have the selfishness of Donald Trump splitting the base of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, pitting us against one another so that we have daggers and shards of glass and sharp things at each other's jugulars, prepared to fight out to the death, thereby allowing the Fabian socialist Hillary Clinton to get in. And then we have the selfishness of John Kasich. And as you mentioned, he did say directly after his loss in New Hampshire that maybe he should have run as a Democrat. But it also speaks to just how cowardly he is, in that he is not actually willing to do so. That speaks volumes about his character, or more importantly, and more on point in this case, lack thereof. And you see, you have to have character in order to be effective. You have to have character to resonate with the American people. Otherwise, you're just going to be dead on arrival in the general election.
How are you going to be the leader of the free world, the president of the United States, if you are second guessing yourself after losing a state? Well, maybe I should run this way. You know what? We don't want somebody who's going to second guess the decisions that they make. I don't want somebody leading this country who is faced with a threat of, oh, I don't know, let's say Iran becoming a militaristic force and threatening our allies, especially Israel, and actually having the capability of carrying out said threats. And then you have to make the decision to go and intervene because you are obligated to do so by way of a treaty, which would be considered as a certain type of law which was created by under the pursuance of the Constitution. And as president of the United States, you take an oath to faithfully execute those laws and treaties. I don't want you to make a decision, say, and then call for the attack, call for the intervention, and then pull out just before it reaches land because you second guess yourself. I don't want that. The country doesn't want that. We cannot afford that. Everybody wants
down. You know what it really is, Jeremy? It comes down to a notion of courageous conservatism. And I saw an article today in which they compared Ted Cruz to Sam Houston. Now, Sam Houston had stood up in front of the United States Senate back when he was a senator and had said that no matter what type of intimidation, and I'm paraphrasing here, or any type of chicanery you try to use to silence me, it won't work. You cannot silence me. You cannot shame me. I do not care. I stand for the truth, and I will do everything I can to represent my people and to push forth the truth. That's the same message that Cruz abides by. And guess what? It's the same message that we abide by here at the Wright Flyer. That is the type of principled leadership that is necessary to truly run this country. That is something that both John Kasich and Donald Trump, Donaldus, they lack it. They lack this true character trait. They are a joke, a farce, a couple of con men, a couple of carnival barkers. And what are they working for? They are working for the disruption of our primary process, of our electoral process, and of truly restoring this country to where it needs to be by removing the chains and shackles of governmental bondage, tyranny, serfdom, and allowing the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this great country, we the people, to do the prerequisite steps to right the path of this country.
Well, they have a sense of a mental state to a
A
certain
state of delusion, sure.
state of delusion, but also wrapped up in that delusion is this sense of they're entitled just because of who they are. Just because, well, I'm Donald Trump or I'm John Key. I was governor of Ohio. Blah blah. I don't care.
Well, I was governor of Ohio, and I have Fruit Ninja hands, and you just can't trust these people. They're so mean. They're so nasty. But I can play Fruit Ninja. Come on.
I don't care who you are. I really don't. I don't care where you've come, where you've been, who you are. When you step up and you make statements that are put into a certain context, specifically spoken a certain way with a certain tone of voice, and have a certain affliction to them, where it comes off as you are demanding this because of who you are, you're a fraud. You are an absolute fraud.
Then there's this whole thing of where he said that he doesn't want to split up families and that we can't be any tougher on illegal aliens and that we just need a guest worker program and then we can close the wall or border or whatever.
Horse hockey.
Yeah. It comes down to he is just playing along this Fabian socialist game that he has played along with his entire political career. That is the type of people. Those are the types of political views that just drive the American electorate batty. And
here's an idea.
Who can blame them? Who can blame them?
Here's an idea, Kasich. If you want to exhibit family values, keeping the family together, why not talk about the fundamental tenets of the Constitution rooted in natural law of the family nucleus? Why don't you bring that up instead of saying, well, we can't, all these illegal aliens or these, as he would say, illegal immigrants, these undocumented immigrants. Of
course, Jeremy, he's too busy trying to double down on his Common Core education, to take away, once again, the parents' influence. So I don't get it, Johnny. It's bad for one type of family, but for American citizens, you're going to take away the parents' rights to say anything. And he said, just relax, people. You're just making a mountain out of a molehill. No, we're not. We're speaking of a real problem. We're speaking of a real threat that is facing our way of raising children. And by the way, folks, that is something that the government shouldn't interfere with. That is considered one of your basic rights, is to be able to raise your children as you see fit. That's part of this whole idea of having this reasonable expectation from of security from unreasonable searches and seizures and intrusions by the government. It's the same type of thing. Common Core is a type of intrusion. There's no other way to describe it.
This is another thing that Dobbs warned us about. Over what, 60 years ago?
Yeah.
So, and this whole thing, this threat on the family nucleus, it goes back further than that. Let's go back to, we can go back to Teddy Roosevelt. If you think about it.
Well, it goes to Marx. It goes to Karl Marx all the way back to the 1840s.
Yeah. But here in the United States, I mean, it's just Roosevelt wanted to implement Marxism. Now, let's look at the Roosevelt family. We've mentioned this before. Archibald Roosevelt.
Teddy's youngest son.
Teddy's youngest son. Teddy Roosevelt did exhibit.
Abandoned his family.
He abandoned his family. Teddy Roosevelt, at the beginning, did exhibit constitutional conservative values. And then he changed. And people will say, oh, well, people change all the time. There's a time to change. You can never abandon your principles. That's what Roosevelt did. He had conservative principles, and when he changed, he did not carry those principles with him. He abandoned them, and then he changed, and he changed for the worse. And his youngest son, Archibald, realized that, saw that, and completely distanced himself from that. And he warned about it. That just, if you look at the life of Archibald Roosevelt, you would see that he stood for the family nucleus. He understood it more than anybody, would, and especially with this situation of his father abandoning him and his siblings and his mother. If that is not a lesson or a teacher rooted in history
and pain,
I don't know, and pain, I don't know what is. I mean, God, I can't even imagine what it would have been like if my father would have abandoned me and my family, abandoned his family. I can't. I don't even want to think about it. I don't even.
With Ted Cruz for a short time.
Sure, and I don't even want to think about it. I don't, because I don't want to have that weight on my shoulders.
But let's take it from the point that it happened with Ted Cruz, and he's been able to smooth the relationship over with his father. Yes, his father and his mother split after he was an adult, but this speaks to his father having that conversion and begging his family for forgiveness. That is the key difference that you're not going to find in the Roosevelt family, because Teddy Roosevelt never asked for forgiveness. Not once. Never.
And I don't think Ted Cruz's father abandoned his principles, because if he did, he would have not come and asked for forgiveness. See, that's part of the principles. That's the whole thing.
He originally didn't have the principles. He was an atheist at the time. And he went back to Texas. So he developed the principles. Yes.
There we go. So it just speaks volumes to when we mention having principles and not abandoning your principles, not going against them or leaving them behind because you want to make this miraculous and paramount change. I understand. And this is the problem with the Trump Stapo. We get you're upset. We understand you're upset. And if you abandon your principles because you're upset and you want to go after somebody who is 180 degrees polar opposite of what your principles are, and you support them, you are abandoning your principles. You can never come back from that. You simply can't. Not in the way or the capacity.
Not without tarnishment.
Not without tarnishment, not without being in the capacity that you were prior to abandoning said principles. It just can't happen. And again, it speaks to when we mentioned trust and respect the other night. It takes a lifetime to build, but only a minute to lose. And that's exactly what's going to happen.
And it's the same thing with a person's reputation. It is so vital that we be vigilant in protecting our reputations, and not just ours. That means all of our cherished listening passengers and audience. Because if you don't stand up to defend your reputation, which in most cases is all anybody's ever going to have to determine whether you are somebody who's trustworthy to work with or not, then you're really going to have a problem. Because that reputation, it's going to spread like wildfire, and like a shadow, it's going to follow you all the world around. Anywhere you go, it is going to be right there behind you. You cannot escape it. That is why it is so important now that we pause and we take a moment and we ask ourselves whether what it is we're doing is being harmful to us, is encroaching upon the rights of other fellow sovereign American citizens, and if so, then we need to correct that behavior before the damage to our reputations becomes both irreparable and permanent. That is what we have to do as popular sovereigns. And of course, that is no easy task to do. Self-reflection and self-evaluation are never easy tasks. Never.
No, and oftentimes a lot of people don't even want to do it because there's a sense of truth that is unveiled when that happens. And part of the problem with what our country deals with, and I think this is one of the main issues or main roots that drives all the issues that we talk about, whether it's abortion, gay marriage, foreign policy, constitutional rights, so on and so forth, is that people are afraid of the truth. They are afraid of the sting that comes with it. The truth hurts.
Jeremy, I think it goes even further than that. They are afraid of the power of freedom. Because if truth sets you free, it gives you absolute freedom. You know what that also means? Because what's always coupled with a freedom or a right is
Responsibility.
a duty, an obligation, and a responsibility. And boy, is that a heavy burden to carry. But you gain so much freedom when you carry that burden, and it balances each other out.
Yeah, and you know, you have a lot of people that, you know, going back, and this, I'm going to try and tie this in as best as I can. But you mentioned Fox News and their slogan, fair and balanced.
Right.
Well, how can you be fair and balanced when you're ignoring the truth and only going to one side with things? You're no longer fair and balanced. In fact, I think they should change their name to Scarred and Trumped, because that's what they are now. They are scarred and trumped.
Or discarded and trumped.
Either way, it's
because their viewership is certainly discarding them because they betrayed their viewership. You see, again, it comes back to this whole notion, ties right back into the notion of reputation. What reputation did Fox once have? As being an alternative source to the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. That's literally what it came down to. They built that reputation. It took them a long time to build that up, to build up the retinue and the repertoire that they had and this reputation that they had. And then, like you said, all it takes is a minute to tear all of that down, to cast all of that asunder, to waste and forfeit all of your hard sweat, blood, tears, and toils, your work.
And now they sit salivating.
And they can't recover.
They're sitting there salivating, wagging their tails, have worried looks on their face, just waiting for that bell to ring.
Yeah. So in other words, they became the very thing that they said they were an alternative to. Think of how damaging and dangerous that really is. And so take Eric Bolling, for example. What's happened to his reputation? You know, he chased Michelle Fields off of his Cash-In Weekend show because of the whole Corey Lewandowski scandal. And we've sure noticed that since the shakeup in the Trump camp and staff and personnel lately, old Lewandowski seems to be neutered. But Eric Bolling firing her for that, and just the vitriol that he's been spewing on Twitter, blocking people just for disagreeing with him, these are going to hurt his reputation of being this open-minded conservative that it is truly about conservative values. Again, I'm sorry. Once you tarnish your reputation in such a fashion, as Jeremy had mentioned here earlier, you cannot so easily come back from that. It's going to take 10 times as much time to re-establish a reputation as it did to build the reputation in the first place.
You know, it's a lot like being in a relationship. It really is. And no, I'm not going to turn this into a Dr. Ruth hour or anything like that, but it's...
I'm working on getting my world's smallest violin out.
It's the instance where if you have, you know, a husband and wife, and then there's adultery that occurs on either part, you know, reestablishing that trust and that respect in that marriage, and back to what it originally was at the onset of it, it never fully comes back to fruition. It never does, because there's always one. This is
there's a breach of trust, as you said.
There's a breach of trust, and when that seed of doubt, as very small as it is, no matter how big that seed of doubt is, that's planted into the mind of either the husband or the wife, whichever way it went down, it's always going to be there. It's always going to be there.
Of course it is, because what it does is it leaves a taint. It leaves a mark. It is a nick. It is an unraveling thing. So if it is the societal fabric or the familial fabric of a marriage, because as we've said numerous times on past episodes of the Wright Flyer, the fundamental building block of society is the family. That's part of the natural order of things. That's part of the natural law tenets that underpins our entire representative Republican form of government and our Constitution. But when you nick it like that, you can't just, depending on where it is, sew that back in or repair that or patch it. It's never going to be the same. It's never going to be as strong as it was before that initial nick took place. And that is exactly what happens with respect to our reputations, or the reputations of the supposed conservative media that just jumped on the bandwagon for Donaldus Julius Caesar Trumpellini. And it's never going to recover. Matt Drudge, for instance, I don't think he can recover. And boy, has there been a bunch of hoopla about that, with Ted Cruz essentially declaring war on Matt Drudge today. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper in the upcoming segment. So we mentioned that there's a bit of bad blood between Ted Cruz and Matt Drudge. Now, there's no reason to be surprised by this, folks, because what we see with the way Matt Drudge has been acting, the way that he has just been a punditry for Trumpaganda, he literally is the new age form of William Randolph Hearst, the guy who started the entire yellow journalism movement, and that speaks volumes about what's happening. He's gone from being a credible source of news information to just spewing out these vitriolic headlines that are designed to attack Cruz. And then what's interesting is he juxtaposed Cruz's statements today saying that he being Matt Drudge, has become an attack wing for the Donald Trump campaign, to support that he had given for him back in March, saying that Drudge had done a great service for conservatism. Well, at one time he had. But Drudge is trying to show, look, he's a hypocrite. Here's the problem, Drudgy. When you start hanging out with people like Alex Jones, the Trumpspiracy bear extraordinaire, it doesn't look good for you. It just doesn't work well. And it, again, back to this notion of reputation. What, Jeremy, do you suppose is going to happen to Drudge's reputation as a result of all of this hoopla that we've seen play out time and again throughout this 2016 presidential election cycle?
We're still calling it a reputation.
Yes, a reputation of ill repute.
I think what we can call it now is these little antics of him, whining off in the distance, after getting kicked in the knee by a Girl Scout troop. I think that's what's happening. He's embracing and creating himself up to be one of the fanatical follicles of Trump that is starting to shed these crocodile tears of whining about this and whining about that. Toughen up, Buttercup, because guess what? This is the real world. See, we are here now. Okay,
we are the new resistance.
We are the new resistance. We are going to be right in your face. You're not going to get rid of us. And I'm willing to bet that in some way you're going to say, oh, well, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. This is what you need to do. Shut up. Period. Just shut up. Because the more you open your mouth, it's like that old saying goes, it's better to be perceived as a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Guess what? Your mouth is as wide as the Grand Canyon right now, Drudgy. It's as wide as the Grand Canyon.
Well, it's certainly the text across his website there is in flashing, annoying 1990s HTML tag red letters. But the other thing that he did that was just this disingenuous thing is he said that Cruz took all of the delegates in Colorado. In fact, he said stole them in a voterless win. Come on. We've already explained how there was a voting process. We have shown how it is a disingenuous story, to put it that way, from that Ari Armstrong backup delegate, who was involved in the entire Colorado electorate process. And so now it comes down to Drudge just going full tilt. Alex Jones, got to throw my tinfoil hat out there with the special string and ball of foil dangling from it to chase off the gamma rays, apparently. That it's bizarre. It's bizarre because instead of being a source of true conservative news and information for disseminating the information that is truly helpful to your user base, you are now insulting their intelligence. And we have seen this play out time and again throughout this entire electoral cycle. Look at the reputations of Sarah Palin. Look at the reputations of Ann Coulter. Look at the reputation of Jeff Sessions, of Chris
Geraldo.
Christie, who, by the way, said that the New York value statements by Cruz were anti-Semitic. I would agree only in one way, that it was actually Trump that first said that, and maybe because of his support from the grand wizard there, David Duke. That is literally what it comes down to. So we see that Drudge is trashing his reputation to run around with little orphan Yap Yap Annie the Floozy, and with Alex Jones, I haven't been mentally sound my entire life. Why would you even seek to associate with such characters, for lack of a better term?
Well, Rainey, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I don't think it's fair. In fact, it's hugely unfair for us to utilize the term. Yeah, it's bigly unfair for us to utilize the term tinfoil hats. I mean,
You're right. It's aluminum foil. We haven't had tinfoil since the 19th century. I'm sorry.
But there's a brand new kind of foil. It's called Trump foil. They're all wearing Trump foil hats. See, the Trump foil hats are much biglier, much shinelier, and much more reflectively easier to repel the facts.
So that's what it is. Actually, and they block the gamma rays that would bring Billy Mays back from his grave. Because if you go and you look, I'm sure his headstone says Billy Mays here.
Yeah,
and maybe he could sell in a bigly way, in a profitly way, these Trumply foilies.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe we could bring them back, and offer a product for all of the individuals that have buyer's remorse that has caused, I don't know, the stains on their face from all the egg. And all these individuals I'm talking about are, of course,
we call
Trump
it caveat
emptor.
emptor.
Yeah, the Trump Stoppo. The Trump Stoppo. And there's a new product by Billy Mays. It's called Trumpy Clean. Forget OxyClean. It's Trumpy Clean now. And so, I mean, you have Matt Drudge, all these other, flapping, gaping maws, spouting off all this crap, Geraldo Rivera, Jerry Rivers, saying
he should go back to hunting for vaults.
Yeah. This is what I never understood about him. Now, I'm not, an expert or even a novice in genealogy stuff, but when has the name Geraldo ever been associated with Judaism?
I'm
well, curious.
The Sandinista Jews that lived in the mythical.
So he's latching on this anti-Semitic rant. I mean, shut up. Again,
well, actually, I think it comes from his mother. I think his mother was Jewish, and I think his father was Puerto Rican or something.
Well,
I don't. It's not
whatever the case is, but
to spend the effort or energy on.
In the spirit of offering up solutions, viable solutions, like we do all the time here on the Wright Flyer, I have a viable solution for Little Orphan Annie, Yap Yap Toto. Geraldo, I can't seem to find a vault worth walking into, Rivera. Eric Bowling
For
Matt Drudge. Eric Bowling for Trumpenbein. Yeah. Matt, I'm going to drudge the bottom of the barrel to bring up a story and lie about it. Drudge. All of these talking floozies. Here's the solution, and it's a viable one. Shut up.
Yeah, but Trump. But here's the
Ja,
other answer.
aber Trump.
Yeah, but here's the response. Okay, but why? There you have it, folks. That is how we turn this around. So Trump is trying, or not Trump, but Drudge in this case, is trying to throw out these articles about Cruz, painting Cruz in a very negative light, using some of the most derogatory pictures of him, just to paint this negative light, to establish a narrative, to be a kingmaker. That is essentially what Matt Drudge is wanting to be, folks. That is what he is aiming to be here. But the problem is, that's essentially just a cyber way of saying, yeah, but Trump.
Yeah.
Okay, but why? Here it is. Drudge came out and said this would be a sexy, exciting race if it was Trump versus Hillary, because it would be negative, it would be nasty, and he could get all of these things pulled into his website. So, in other words, it means that Drudge is trying to become the new mastermind of a new era in Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. That is what it boils down to. There is no other way to cut this. There is no other way to put this. And I hope that he at least gets to feel the type of betrayal that he has made all of us true conservatives feel.
I think I'm going to be sick, Randy. He actually said that it would be a sexy race if Trump and Hillary,
something like that.
My God, you know, if Ron Jeremy gets wind of this, he's going to hang himself. I swear. I thought I was sick before. That's just there's no level of sickness that I can describe or even. Oh my God. How
I was paraphrasing. I'm not sure what his exact phraseology was. But
even paraphrasing. Why?
Well, I mean, maybe it's because he was seen at one of
Trump.
the debates with Ann Coulter.
Trump.
But okay, why?
I'm sorry, folks. I'm feeling quite queasy now. I don't.
Well, here, go look at a picture of a dog taking its business outside. It'll make you feel better, I swear.
Yeah.
Unless that dog, of course, is Ann Coulter. But what it comes down to is it shows that the veneer of being a conservative news outlet is a bunch of bunk. That they are just portraying this as a business model in order to get our money, our hard-earned cash, and hoodwink us. They're not movement conservatives. We here are movement conservatives. We believe in the cause of the Constitution. We believe in the promotion, the advocacy of, and the preservation of our shared Constitution. I don't think Drudge does. I don't.
You know, it kind of makes me wonder if he ever did, or anybody like him that is, you know, at one point in time,
by a strong hatred of the Clinton camp, the Clintonistas, sure, but
it doesn't. I'm having a hard time understanding that if in believing that somebody like Drudge was ever conservative to begin with, because look at our logic. Look how we think. Look at the things that we talk about. we're always talking about the preservation of our republic, the maintenance and obligation
Safeguarding, yeah.
and safeguarding, the maintenance and obligation we have not only to ourselves but our posterity, in making sure that our Constitution, our very way of life, and the whole impetus of our existence as a republic is not tarnished or never goes away. If a person holds those beliefs, I don't understand how they can ever abandon them. It goes back to what you were saying about the truth setting people free.
Right.
It's almost like, again, they fear that freedom. They don't like it because it is a painful type of freedom. Freedom isn't free. You have to have sacrifices. You have to endure hardships. You have to endure and suffer pain in order to
Something
have
of
that.
equal value.
Right. And see, this right here is the whole crux of the difference between Americanism and American values and New York values. Because see, value is only holds worth in the eye of the beholder. Okay. Trump thinks that everything's negotiable. Oh, everything has value to it. Wrong. What he may value as being, having worth in exceptionalism is not what our values are. We don't perceive that.
It comes down to Trump as seeing things in a framework of moral relativism. It comes down to there is no one true right or wrong. And if you actually assume such a position as that, it becomes most difficult to truly understand who you are. And that could explain why he has taken so many different sides on so many different pressing issues with a straight face, because he doesn't understand. He doesn't really understand who he is, what he stands for, what's right, what's wrong, what's black, what's white, what's light, what's darkness, night, day, night.
Hot,
you see,
cold. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to because he's afraid to. That's his problem. He's
because
afraid.
He'd have to think. He'd have to think.
Yeah, and he would only have to think when he comes to the realization of what he truly is. Because at that point, he would have to think about, well, geez, this is what I really truly am. Now I have to think on how I'm going to maintain my lifestyle, maintain my life, go through, who am I going to have to distance myself from so that I don't go back to that? I don't think Trump is ever capable of coming over to the side of true conservatism.
Of course not. Because think about it. When he said that he claims to be a Christian, but then comes out and says that he's never had reason to ask God for forgiveness because he's never done anything once in his life that was wrong. That's staggering.
And here's the thing, being a Christian, you have the understanding through the realization of repentance and coming to have Christ in your heart, that that you're not perfect, because you have to have forgiveness. Even if you are a Christian, you are still a sinner. You will be a sinner until you go home. You will always be a sinner while here on this earth. Even if you have Christ on your heart, you will still be a sinner. That is a fact. Christ even said that himself. So for Trump to say that he's never had to ask for forgiveness, but yet claims to be a Christian, he's a false prophet, is what he is. Again, I bring up that old adage and that proverb that the greatest thing the devil ever did or accomplished was to convince the world he didn't exist. And that's what Trump is doing. He's convincing the world that he is something that he is not.
And it goes along the lines of the other old adage that the devil's in the details. You have to be willing to read between the lines, to dig in a little bit deeper, to discover who these people are. And when you start digging into the trail, you may not like the answers that you start to find. That's certainly the case with Donald Trump, who has changed his party affiliation numerous times.
Which he had no problem doing, because he said he'll adapt and change to whatever.
Of course, he is a political chameleon.
Yes.
And he said that numerous times in front of the cameras. And then, of course, he made that infamous statement that everything is up for negotiation.
Yeah.
So that all comes back to this notion of, well, how can our non-delegable, non-negotiable, fundamental and inalienable rights that were endowed to us by our creators be negotiable? When you stop and think about it, fundamental, inalienable, the term inalienable means it's non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
By its very nature, it's non-negotiable. And again, this is something Trump and all of his entourage, including Matt Drudge, including Little Orphan Annie, Yep, Toto, Coulter, Floozy,
Eric
and all the
Trump
others.
Trump and Vine.
And yeah, Judge Janine Retainer, they are all part of the problem. They don't understand that there are certain things that are simply non-negotiable. Our fundamental and inalienable rights are non-negotiable. Our Constitution, sorry, except for the amendment process, it is non-negotiable.
But here's the thing. They do become negotiable when you abandon them and stop adhering to them.
But
and
you know,
that point,
the only ones who can allow that to happen is the people.
Yes. So when the people abandon their principles, now they are themselves trying to negotiate with something that at that point they no longer have.
Mm-hmm.
Because your principles, conservative principles, your moral principles, your ethical principles are all deeply rooted and attached to the Constitution, because that is rooted in natural law. So when you
and this is the inexorable flaw of moral relativism, because moral relativism has no core, no basis, nothing that is concrete or substantive, then it is going to betray you each and every time. You're going to think that you have something that you don't have. But the thing is, all the charlatans, the hucksters, the con artists, the snake oil salesmen, the carnival barkers have to do is say, I've changed the rules. I've changed the rules. Remember the line from The Empire Strikes Back? I've just altered the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
Yes.
That is what everything being negotiable is. That's everything being negotiable.
Yeah. It's amazing that, you know, and to us, Randy, it's a very simple concept. Mm-hmm. Only because I mean, this is what we do. This is our life's work. This is what our careers are based on. So of course we have a bias to it, but I don't think that bias was created because of our career paths. I think through the history and understanding the history of how our Constitution came to be, how our country, our republic was formulated and established, that, and understanding what our birthright is as the ultimate sovereigns and wielders of authority, that having that understanding, that's what creates that bias. Mm-hmm. And you know, we hear it all the time, and you know, various different college and university classes, you know, with cultural diversity and ethics and this and that. When in psychology, when you talk about having a bias, you know, people, they always want to shame people for having a bias. Well, that's hogwash. If we don't have, if we're not biased,
is a bias.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a projected bias. And that's exactly what these talking wigs are doing. These fanatical follicles of Trump are doing, is they're projecting their own bias.
The Trump standards.
The Trump standards. Yeah, you know, they're projecting their own bias that they've come to embrace because they've abandoned their own principles. So they think that everybody else should do it because why? They say so, because of who they are. So now they've placed themselves in a class of people. They've become elitists themselves. And Eric Bolling for Trump and Biden has always talked about being anti-elitism. Well, guess what? You're a fraud. You are an elitist now because you are projecting yourself. And what you did to Michelle Fields is deplorable.
Yeah.
Absolutely deplorable. How could you call yourself a man in any sense of the term in the way you treated her? I'm going to call you Corey Lewandowski Jr. How's that? Because it's right along the same lines of degradation. You worthless sycophant.
Even if Michelle Fields had exaggerated details of the story, even if she had forgotten or misremembered some of the pernicious details of the incident that occurred in that Trump rally and event, the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter, because Lewandowski said he never touched her, but there is video evidence that he did, with enough pressure to move her, to physically move her. And again, Trump lied about that and said that he was the one that released that footage. No, that the police released that footage. That was from security cameras within the venue and auditorium itself. And that comes down to the other aspect of what Lewandowski did. If Lewandowski and Trump, as they have proclaimed, thought that they were in danger, why then did not the Secret Service, who are much better trained in this sort of thing, act? They were right there. He reached across the Secret Service to grab her, stopped them, blocked their path, prevented them from actually protecting Trump. Therein lies the problem. It's a made-up thing on their part. And what Eric Bolling for Trump and Biden said was he had pushed her off because she had a problem with credibility. I'm sorry. Who has a bigger credibility problem? The Trump camp that said that it was a lie and that it never happened, but then there's video evidence that it did happen, and, oh, by the way, the prosecutor thought it was big enough to charge Lewandowski with simple misdemeanor battery.
Yep.
I'm sorry, to me, that's a bigger problem. That's a bigger credibility problem. Okay, Eric Bolling, does that mean that you're now going to drop all support for Trump? Oh, wait, no, you're not. So it's selective. It's bovine excrement. That's what it is.
Yep. Absolutely. And you know, we're not going to see, like you said, Eric Bolling for Trump and Biden, or Little Orphan Annie Yap Yap Toto,
the floozy.
We're not going to see any of them stop their support for Trump. Why? They have to continue it. They have to keep doubling down every single time, because if they don't, they have to keep that up, or else they're going to be found out and exposed for what they truly are. And they don't want that. Why? Because they don't want to be set free. They don't want to be free individuals. They're perfectly happy with being held under the thumb of a potentate. It would be no different than an individual that, and Randy, you and I have encountered individuals like this that are, you know, anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment. Well, I don't need a gun to protect my family. Okay, so when the murderer and rapist comes into your home with a gun to your head, holds the gun to your head while their accomplices rape and murder your wife and your daughters, you're okay with that. Well, there's nothing I can do at that point. So you're okay with that. This is no different. Trump and his accomplices are murdering and raping all that is sacred with our electoral process, with our Constitution. And you're sitting by, not doing a damn thing to stand up and defend it. Ann Coulter, you especially. You are a licensed attorney. You took an oath. Why are you not upholding your oath?
Because she never believed in her oath to begin with.
Because she doesn't even believe in herself, and she wants revenge for ever being born.
Well, and it's a problem. It's a problem that will never be overcome, because it is a problem that does not tie into logic. Like I said, it's when you have raw emotionalism like this, you are just going to see the nation get further and further down into the gutter, as it has, as we've clearly seen throughout this entire 2016 presidential election cycle. And it shows no signs of getting any better. at any time in the immediate foreseeable future. That is the problem with Ann Coulter. She is projecting this wild-eyed anger, this fury that you mentioned, this blind rage, this unadulterated, unfettered passion. You see, passion to a certain degree is okay, but when it is unfettered, when it is unbridled, when you don't use the force of logic to help draw it back or restrain it some, it becomes all-encompassing. It's like a major blaze that will just engulf an entire town, an entire city, or in this case, an entire representative Republican form of government, which happens to be the longest lasting in all the world. This is why, again, it is so important for us all to have a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared Constitution and thereby our fundamental and unalienable rights. Because if we have that, then we are empowered to stand up to the charlatans and the hucksters and say, no, you can't have our Constitution. No, you cannot trample upon our rights. We will never tolerate it. Now, with that said, it is time to send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. We invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you might have, either here on our YouTube page or on our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. Or you can follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle of @RadioAviationX. That's all one word, folks, @RadioAviationEX, @RadioAviationEX. One more time, @RadioAviationEX. And there you will find the departure board that has Jeremy's personal Twitter account, my personal Twitter account, our Blogspot account where we put some very interesting, mindful, bigly articles from time to time. And then there is also our Cafe Press account. Jeremy, just tell them a little bit about what's available there for their purchase.
Well, just a little bit. Let's see. We have hats.
And no, it's not peanuts or pretzels.
No, absolutely not. Well, I'm sure we could if we could figure a way to attach our logo to it. But
yeah,
you know, we have, folks, we have hats. We have various different garb and attire you can purchase, watches, clocks, even sleepwear, drinking glasses, shot glasses, all with
underwear,
our
main logo
and our first passenger logo, first class passenger logo. Please stop by, check it out. Proceed to the checkout after you check some things out. Don't just window shop.
And be very patronizing to us. We do like patronizing.
Yes. And
ladies
of course,
and gentlemen,
folks, all of those things, if you purchase them, will actually aid us. We're not looking to, get rich off this, but hey, it's capitalism, and we surely endorse that.
Take care, folks. We'll see you next time.